Hello, students, and welcome to our lecture video on the Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers. Now, the main objective to understand with this lesson is that even though the Constitutional Convention occurred in 1787, that the Constitution wasn't ratified or officially accepted by 9 of the 13 states until 1791. Now, between this time, 1787 and 1791, there was a very, very intense debate in this country over whether or not to ratify the Constitution. There were a group of people that wanted to ratify the Constitution, known as Federalists, and there was a group that did not want to ratify the Constitution, known as the Anti-Federalists. Each of them wrote a series of papers that were printed in newspapers, trying to persuade the public one way or the other. So the goal of this lesson is to understand that those papers framed the debate over whether or not to ratify the Constitution. So let's talk about the Federalists first. First of all, as I've already said, the Federalists supported the Constitution. They wanted the U.S. to have a strong central government or strong national government, the one that's in Washington, D.C., the one that rules the country. Some of the leaders during this time were James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. For the Anti-Federalists, they didn't support the Constitution as written. They supported certain elements, and there were certain elements that they absolutely detested. They absolutely hated. They wanted the U.S. to have a weak central government. They wanted the states to hold more power, and they were very worried that if there was a strong central government, that another tyranny would form, another dictatorship, just like they were under in Britain, essentially, and that the best way to keep that from happening was to give the most power to the states and not the central government. A couple leaders were Patrick Henry and Samuel Adams, and I'll also add Thomas Jefferson was a very, very big proponent. So the issue number one they were concerned about is presidential power. The Federalists said the president should have a lot of power. The Anti-Federalists said that the office of president should be weak. If you'll recall, under the Articles of Confederation, we had no actual president, and that was a problem. There was no leader to look to, there was no leadership, there was no vision. So the Federalists said to fix this, we needed a strong national leader. However, the Anti-Federalists still held to the opinion that a strong national leader would be bad for the country because that person could become a dictator. The second issue is states' rights. The Federalists said that states' rights are not as important as the national government's rights. The Anti-Federalists said that states' rights were more important than the central government's rights. The Federalists said that without a strong central government, our nation would not survive. They pointed to the fact that under the Articles of Confederation, in which we had a weak central government, the system did not work. So they said, now we have learned our lesson. With this Constitution, we have a strong central government, strong enough to keep us stabilized and to keep us together. The Anti-Federalists were not persuaded. They thought that the national government would become too powerful. And again, the best way to counteract that was to give a lot of power to the states. So these were two of the main issues. There were many, many more. And these led to the writing of the Federalist Papers. It was a series of articles published in New York newspapers arguing in favor of the Constitution. And again, the purpose was to convince the people that the Constitution needed to be ratified. In response to the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalists waged their own campaign and began writing their own letters to be published in newspapers, known as the Anti-Federalist Papers. Again, a series of articles published in New York newspapers arguing against the Constitution in order to convince the people that it should not be ratified. Now, the main problem the Anti-Federalists had with the Constitution as it was written is that there was no national Bill of Rights. The first 10 amendments that we've discussed already in this class were not yet added to the Constitution. There was no national Bill of Rights. Now, the reason why there wasn't one put in the Constitution in the first place is that nearly every state already had their own Bill of Rights protecting the rights of their people. So therefore, the Founding Fathers felt it was unnecessary to add another one to the national Constitution. However, the Anti-Federalists agreed. They said that only when a Bill of Rights was added to the national Constitution, a national Bill of Rights, would they be willing to accept it. So they reached a compromise, and in 1789, a Bill of Rights actually was added to the U.S. Constitution, the first 10 amendments. This appeased the Anti-Federalists enough to throw the support of most of them behind it. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the Constitution was ratified in 1791, and it is, of course, still in effect today. Our Constitution is known as a living Constitution because it has survived, and we've been able to adapt and change, but still follow it for so many years. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.